Okay, so this is Africa and the Cold War. We took a look at it in a more European context, US versus USSR, the Cold War. So the two big powers didn't actually fight each other on the ground, but they utilized various well-located territories to carry out this battle. Now, in Angola, same thing happened. So this source-based question looks at the Angolan Civil War and its significance in Cold War dynamics. And the US poking their noses again here in Southern Africa, so did the USSR. We also did. I mean, this was during the apartheid era, and apartheid was more or less backed by the US. So we fought on the side of the US of capitalism. So if South Africa is like that, and Namibia is kind of like that, Angola looks like that. And we were there. We were fighting in Angola. Namibia wasn't Namibia back then. It was southwestern Africa, and we chucked in some troops in Angola, and we suffered a fair bit of casualties as well. So after gaining independence from Portugal, so Angola was a Portuguese colony. I know a little bit of Portuguese. Hola, tudo bem, obrigada. That's like, hi, how are you? Thank you. And that's literally all I know. I know, terrible 3 words. And this was in 1975, so not too long ago. 50 years ago. Okay, nice. 50 years of independence from European colonial rule. Angola descended into civil war between 3 main movements. The MPLA, the Communist Party, Marxist movement. The FNLA, backed by the USA, and UNITA. So the MPLA, FNLA, and UNITA, they were the 3 main liberation movements that fought for power in Angola, which led to the Angolan Civil War. So MPLA, it was a Marxist organization supported by the Soviet Union as well as Cuba, so even some Cuban troops and medics came through to help, which ultimately controlled the government after independence. But the FNLA, the National Front for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA is Popular Movement for Liberation of Angola. The FNLA, they were a pro-Western group rooted in the Bakongo people of northern Angola. So the FNLA came from the north. And then there was UNITA. They were also pro-Western, and they were supported by the US, South Africa, and, believe it or not, even China. China, even though they followed communism and communist ideals, they still backed UNITA. Just a bunch of politics there. So it was the MPLA versus the other two, FNLA and UNITA. So MPLA was Marxist. They received Soviet and Cuban support. FNLA, pro-Western, they received support from the US, South Africa, and also at the time, well, it's present-day Congo, but back then it was called Zaire. They were also backed by the US, and they came to the party as well in Angola. And UNITA, not all that big, but they fought as a rebel group, basically, against the MPLA through a lot of civil war. Okay, and they all stem from different indigenous groups within Angolan society. Now, each faction, they received external support. So the MPLA received it from USSR and Cuba, FNLA from USA, and UNITA from USA and South Africa, as previously discussed. Now, Angola thus became a proxy battleground for Cold War rivals. So it was just literally a battlefield. Angola is in Africa. The US is in North America. Russia is basically in Europe, right? But here, these guys are fighting in Africa, okay? Just wrecking an African land for their own gain, their own expansion. The USSR and Cuba's involvement marked one of the most intense forms of Soviet military engagement in Africa. While South Africa, they intervened to curb communist expansion. This was our apartheid government. The USA supported anti-communist forces to maintain its global strategic position, and the Civil War, it devastated Angola, but it also shifted regional power dynamics. So key battles like this one here in Cueto Carnival from 1987 to 1988, just before the Cold War ended in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall and all that jazz, where Cuban and Angolan forces clashed with South African troops, and this symbolized the high stakes of the Cold War in Africa. This conflict, it influenced the independence of Namibia and South Africa's internal political decisions. And the source-based task here is to evaluate documents that discuss the motivations and, well, the consequences of external foreign intervention here. This is a source-based question. The Cold War ideologies and just shifting alliances. How was China communist but still fighting with the capitalist states? The question highlights how the Cold War wasn't just a superpower standoff between the USA and the USSR. It deeply affected developing nations. And to this day, Angola is still struggling. Luanda is actually the most expensive capital city in Africa to live in. Okay, there's severe inequality happening in Angola as well. A lot of people from Angola, they go south to Namibia to even look for work, transforming local conflicts into global flashpoints. MPLA versus FNLA, UNITA, these are just a bunch of ethnic groups within Angola that became political parties, and they reached the global forefront because this Angolan Civil War was huge, and it shaped Africa's post-independence trajectory. So remember, this is the status quo. When a major colonial power leaves, there is going to be a power struggle. There are going to be various ethnic groups that transform into political parties who all want to run and rule the country. And typically it's going to be that ethnic majority in the country. And they'll want to rule. And that leads to a huge power struggle and eventually a civil war. So after colonization, after suffering oppression from, typically a European colonizer for all those years, now there's an internal strife. There's violence among people. It's a civil war. It's between each other. But in South Africa, that's the only country it didn't happen because Mandela wanted a peaceful negotiation between everyone. Those CODESA negotiations, seeking forgiveness, and seeing it as the only way to unite white, black, Indian, colored South Africans. So yeah, that's just something to be grateful for. South Africa could have gone like this. We could have been in civil war, but it just took a very strong leader not to incite any more violence after the atrocity that was apartheid, but to seek forgiveness above all else.